Lucas Meyer watched the raindrops roll down the train window as the platform of Dortmund Hauptbahnhof came into view. His heart thudded, not from excitement, but from something closer to fear. This was supposed to be a new beginning, a chance to reinvent himself. He had left behind a quiet village near the Black Forest where nobody really understood him. In Dortmund, people moved faster, talked louder, dressed sharper. And that was exactly what Lucas wanted, to become someone who mattered. His mother had managed to get him enrolled in one of Dortmund's most prestigious technical secondary schools, a place where the sons and daughters of doctors, engineers, and business owners competed for top spots. Lucas, the son of a baker, felt the weight of their expectations before he even stepped through the front gate. It was raining harder now, and his coat was already soaked through. He stood outside the school's tall iron gates the next morning, watching the other students gather in clusters, laughing and shoving each other playfully. He caught sight of one group in particular, 3 boys in expensive jackets and trainers that probably cost more than his monthly rent. At the center stood Jonas Keller, tall, sharp-jawed, with a confidence that seemed to radiate off him. Lucas had read about Jonas in a local paper. He had won robotics competitions, spoken at youth innovation summits. He was practically a celebrity here. Inside the school, Lucas was shown to his class by a secretary with a tired smile. The classroom buzzed with chatter that stopped only when Jonas himself walked in and took a seat at the back. Lucas found himself seated just 2 rows away. By lunchtime, he had learned 3 things. Nobody talked to him unless necessary. Everybody respected Jonas, and there were unspoken rules he didn't yet understand. That afternoon, Lucas made his first move. He approached Jonas near the vending machines and made a comment about a coding project he knew Jonas had been working on. The older boy raised an eyebrow, surprised that someone like Lucas knew about it. But he smiled just slightly. That was all the invitation Lucas needed. Over the next week, Lucas spent every moment studying Jonas and his circle. What they liked, what they mocked, how they talked. He mimicked their tone, adjusted his clothes, even started walking like them. Slowly, he was allowed closer. They laughed at his jokes. They let him sit at their table. But the price was already beginning to show. He stopped texting his old friends back home. He stayed up late watching videos on expensive gadgets and luxury brands he couldn't afford. And worst of all, he began to lie. Little things at first, claiming his dad had studied engineering or that he had been invited to speak at a tech fair. Jonas never questioned it. He seemed amused by Lucas's hunger. He even encouraged it, once handing him a fake pass to a private party and saying, "Let's see if you can keep up." Lucas didn't sleep that night. He stared at the fake pass on his desk, wondering what he had just agreed to. But the need to belong had already sunk too deep. He would do anything now. The warehouse on the edge of Dortmund's old industrial district didn't look like much from the outside. But as Lucas stepped inside, the air changed. Music pounded through the metal walls, neon lights splashed colors across polished concrete floors, and clusters of teenagers in designer clothes moved with the ease of those born into privilege. Jonas had told him, "Just blend in. Don't speak too much. Let them think you belong." Lucas clutched the fake pass in his coat pocket, the edges already damp from his sweating palms. The bouncer gave him a glance and waved him in. That's simple. For a few minutes, Lucas felt weightless. He drifted through the crowd, nodding, smiling, pretending he had done this 100 times. He recognized a few faces from school, students whose families owned companies, whose last names were printed on buildings and charity banners. Then he saw her. Sophie Klein. She was standing near the bar, laughing at something someone had said, her auburn hair catching the light. Everyone at school knew her. She was in the robotics club too, once paired with Jonas at a competition. Lucas had never dared speak to her. But tonight, she was looking right at him. "Lucas, right?" she asked. Her voice cut through the music. "From our computer science class?" He blinked. "Yeah, that's me." She smiled. "Didn't know you came to things like this." "I usually don't," he admitted, then quickly added, "but Jonas invited me." She nodded slowly, her gaze lingering. "Be careful," she said softly. "He doesn't invite just anyone." Before Lucas could ask what she meant, someone called her name, and she was gone. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Drinks were passed around. Laughter echoed. Someone lit fireworks outside. Lucas stood on the balcony watching the sparks crackle against the night sky. He had made it. He was inside now. But as he turned to go back in, he saw Jonas in a corner with a group of older boys. They were laughing over something on a phone screen, and Jonas held up a hand, gesturing Lucas over. "Hey, genius," Jonas said, grinning. "Want to help us with something?" Lucas stepped closer, his stomach tightening. One of the boys handed him a flash drive. "We need a bit of technical magic at school. Nothing serious. Just a little file switch before grades are finalized. Think you can manage that?" Lucas stared at the flash drive. He had broken small rules before, lied about his past, bent the truth. But this was different. It meant breaching the school system, tampering with official records. And Jonas was watching him carefully, smile still in place, but eyes cold. Saying no now would cost him everything he had clawed his way into. So he nodded. Just once. And took the flash drive. The school's computer lab was silent at dusk, the corridors nearly empty as most students had already left. Lucas sat in front of the monitor, the flash drive trembling slightly between his fingers. He had rehearsed the steps a dozen times in his head, how to access the faculty folder, bypass the internal firewall, and replace the grading spreadsheet with the altered version Jonas had provided. His palms were slick with sweat. He wasn't doing this for himself. His grades were fine. This was about gaining Jonas's full trust, cementing his place in the circle. He told himself it was a one-time thing. With a final glance at the door, Lucas inserted the flash drive. The screen flickered once, then the contents loaded. He typed quickly, just as he had practiced on his own laptop. Passwords he had overheard in the staff room, admin shortcuts Jonas had somehow learned. Each click was another step away from the version of himself he had once been. 10 minutes later, it was done. He wiped his tracks, shut the system down, and left without looking back. The next morning, Jonas greeted him with a slow clap and a smirk. "Didn't think you'd actually do it." Lucas tried to smile, but his stomach churned. "I said I would, didn't I?" Jonas slung an arm around his shoulder. "You're now. For real." That week, Lucas found doors opening to him. He was invited to exclusive clubs. Teachers started to treat him with an odd mix of wariness and respect. Other students followed his lead. He had become someone. But then the audit happened. It began with a letter from the school board, requesting a routine check of grading records. At first, no one blinked. But then murmurs started circulating. A mismatch in the backup files. A corrupted timestamp. The digital signature missing from the principal's folder. By the end of the week, a senior administrator from Berlin had arrived. Lucas kept his head down. He avoided Jonas. He avoided Sophie, too, whose glance in class had turned sharp and cold. Something in her expression said she knew. One evening, as Lucas sat alone in the library, a voice spoke softly beside him. "You changed my grade." He looked up to see a classmate, Simon Berg, standing there, holding a printout of his academic record. "I was supposed to pass. Now I failed. My parents think I lied. What did you do?" Lucas opened his mouth, but no sound came. Simon stared at him for a long time, then walked away. The walls were closing in. By the start of the new term, the atmosphere at school had shifted. Hallways once filled with careless chatter now carried whispers behind cupped hands. The audit was no longer a secret. Teachers walked briskly, heads down. Students avoided eye contact with the administration. Lucas moved through it all like a ghost. He hadn't spoken to Jonas since the night of the party. Jonas, ever the opportunist, seemed unfazed. If anything, he was more popular than ever. Rumors spread that he had dirt on everyone, photos, files, messages. Nobody dared cross him. Lucas, though, was drowning. His nights were sleepless. His appetite gone. Every noise behind him made his heart leap. It wasn't just the guilt. It was the fear. Someone knew. Sophie knew. Simon suspected. And whoever was leading the audit. They were getting closer. One afternoon, Sophie cornered him by the robotics lab. No one else was around. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight. Lucas avoided her gaze.
About what?
"Don't insult me. You know exactly what." He didn't answer. "I saw your name in the file logs," she continued. "I'm not stupid. You accessed the grading server that night." "I didn't change your grade," Lucas said weakly. "That's not the point." Her voice cracked. "The whole system's compromised now. People are getting punished for things they didn't do." He looked up at her, finally, and for the first time, she saw the panic in his eyes. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "But it did," Sophie snapped. Then, more quietly, "You still have the flash drive, don't you?" Lucas nodded slowly.
Good.
"Because you're going to fix this." He blinked.
How?
"You're going to expose Jonas." Lucas laughed bitterly. "You think it's that easy? He has everything. Screenshots, messages, voice recordings. If I go down, he takes me and half the school with him." Sophie crossed her arms. "Then maybe it's time someone took the fall. But better you choose how it ends than wait for it to come crashing down." Her words haunted him for days. The school audit intensified. A technician from Berlin had flagged an unauthorized USB access, time-stamped precisely during the night of the party. The administration began calling in students for questioning. Lucas was next on the list. He sat in the office, the chair too stiff, the lights too bright. Across from him, the administrator's face was unreadable. "Lucas Weber, your login credentials were used to access restricted records on the 11th of last month. Can you explain this?" Lucas stared at his hands. This was the moment. Say the wrong thing, and he'd be expelled. Worse, his future, university, scholarships, all gone. But staying silent meant more people getting hurt. He took a breath. "I want to make a statement," he said quietly. "But I won't be the only name you hear." The news spread faster than anyone could control. By the end of the week, Lucas's name had become the subject of every whispered conversation in the school. But what shocked everyone more was that he hadn't gone down alone. Lucas's official statement had implicated Jonas directly, alongside two senior students who had helped distribute altered files. He handed over the flash drive, complete with encrypted folders and chat logs. The evidence was undeniable. The school board responded swiftly. Jonas was suspended indefinitely. His father, a prominent figure in local government, attempted to intervene but failed. The two accomplices were also removed from the student leadership program. A school-wide emergency meeting was called, and the principal addressed the students with barely veiled disappointment. "We cannot allow ambition to replace integrity," she said firmly. "Those who abuse their access will face the consequences." Lucas was not expelled. Instead, he was placed on academic probation and stripped of all club memberships. He was no longer the golden student. Most of his friends disappeared overnight. Even walking down the hallway felt like a silent trial. No words, only judging eyes. Sophie remained. They didn't talk much, but she always nodded when they crossed paths. A small gesture, but it meant everything to him. What hurt most was his parents. His mother's quiet sigh at the dinner table. His father's unspoken shame as he sat reading the newspaper, refusing to look up. But the worst came 2 weeks later. Lucas was called back to the administrator's office. The same Berlin official sat waiting, this time with a softer tone. "You did the right thing, Lucas," he said. "And you prevented further damage."
But
Lucas held his breath. "We have reason to believe Jonas may have copied certain files before the flash drive was turned in. Sensitive files. Including yours." The words hit him like a slap. "We've contacted the relevant authorities, but you should be prepared. If those files appear online, or are used in any way, we'll need your full cooperation." Lucas nodded slowly. That night, he couldn't sleep. His mind spun with the possibilities. What files? What had Jonas taken? Had he copied private messages, photos, recordings? And what if he wasn't done yet? The warning. The email came at 3 in the morning. Lucas had been awake, staring at the ceiling, when his phone buzzed. The sender address was scrambled gibberish, but the subject line was clear. Still think you're safe? He opened it, hands trembling. Inside was a single image. A screenshot from an old chat between him and Jonas, one he barely remembered. The message was careless, cocky, and written during a night of venting. It suggested Lucas had once manipulated an assignment score on behalf of another student, long before the scandal began. It was out of context, but it didn't matter. Anyone who saw it would see guilt. Proof. The next morning, Lucas took the long route to school, phone clutched in his hand, mind in a fog. He knew what this was, a warning shot. Jonas, even suspended, was still pulling strings. Sophie found him during lunch. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, sitting beside him with a quiet urgency. He handed her the phone. She stared at the image, eyes narrowing. "Do you remember sending this?" "Barely," Lucas muttered. "It's from months ago. We joked about a lot of things. But no one will see it as a joke now." She was right. Lucas wanted to believe that the worst was behind him, but he was beginning to understand just how deep Jonas's web really ran. Even without access to the school systems, he still had leverage. Later that day, Lucas received another email. This one included 3 more screenshots. No words, just images. His secrets, half-truths, regrets, conversations he had long since forgotten, all ready to be weaponized. He took the phone to the administrator's office. As he stepped inside, his heart thundered. "I need to report something," he said, laying the phone gently on the desk. "I think Jonas is blackmailing me." The administrator looked at the screen, scrolling silently. Then he said, "Did you ever send these messages?" Lucas hesitated.
Yes.
"But they're from a long time ago, out of context. And do they imply wrongdoing?" "Yes." A long pause followed. Then, with a sigh, the administrator leaned back. "Thank you for coming forward. We'll need to involve the authorities again. This isn't just a school issue anymore." That night, Lucas's house was visited by a local investigator. His parents, shocked and confused, listened as he explained everything. Every word tasted like acid. Every detail felt like peeling off a bandage. But he said it all. The investigation escalated. Authorities seized Jonas's school laptop and personal devices. What they found was disturbing: folders of saved messages, voice notes, and sensitive documents from multiple students, not just Lucas. It wasn't just manipulation. It was surveillance. The local news caught wind of it, running headlines about a data scandal at Dortmund Secondary. While no names were printed, the community quickly pieced it together. Lucas's street was suddenly quieter. Neighbors glanced at his family, with a mix of pity and suspicion. In school, he felt like a ghost. Teachers gave polite nods but rarely made eye contact. Students kept their distance, as if afraid his bad luck might be contagious. Even the janitor, who used to greet him every morning, now barely acknowledged him. One afternoon, Lucas found Sophie waiting for him by the old bike racks. "They're saying he hacked the school's cloud," she whispered. He nodded. "They found logs going back almost a year. And your file? Still out there." That was the hardest part, not knowing when or how it might reappear. Sophie hesitated. Then she said, "You know he won't stop." Lucas knew. Jonas wasn't just trying to hurt him. He wanted to erase him. Piece by piece. Later that week, Lucas received a final message. It wasn't an email this time. A plain envelope, no return address, waiting in his locker. Inside was a printed photo of his younger sister at a school play, smiling. On the back, in block letters, "Back off, or more follows." Lucas felt his knees buckle. The school was no longer enough for Jonas. He was reaching into Lucas's home, his family, his world. That night, he sat with his parents. No secrets left. He showed them the photo, told them everything. His mother cried. His father's hands curled into fists. "I won't let him destroy you," his father said quietly. The next morning, Lucas skipped school and took the train to the police station. Alone. "I'm ready to testify," he told the officer at the front desk. "Everything. No more hiding." Lucas sat in a windowless room for over 3 hours, speaking to investigators. He told them everything: the blackmail, the screenshots, the threats, the envelope. Each detail felt like sandpaper against his throat, but he forced every word out. The police recorded everything. They asked him to go over certain conversations again, to clarify timestamps and context. They showed him screenshots from Jonas's devices. Some he recognized, others he didn't. But all of them told the same story. Jonas had built an empire of secrets. Lucas was simply the one who finally refused to stay silent. By the time Lucas left the station, the sky had turned gray. He felt lighter, but also exposed, as if the act of telling the truth had left him vulnerable in ways he couldn't yet describe. That evening, Detective Brandt, one of the investigators, called his family. "We've arrested him," she said. "Jonas was taken into custody this afternoon. The charges include cyberstalking, extortion, and illegal surveillance." The news spread quickly through the school. This time, there were names, headlines. Jonas's face was on every screen. Lucas didn't return to class for 2 days. When he finally did, the air had changed. People no longer avoided him. In fact, some approached him, cautiously, awkwardly, to say they were sorry, or that they hadn't known what he was going through. A few simply nodded in quiet respect. Sophie found him by the vending machine.
"You did it," she said.
"You stopped him." He didn't feel like a hero. Not yet. But for the first time in weeks, Lucas could breathe without fear. Still, there was one more thing to face. Later that week, he met with the school board. A panel of teachers, administrators, and legal advisors gathered in a small conference room. His file, the one Jonas had used to threaten him, sat unopened in the center of the table. "We've reviewed the material," the head administrator said. "Some of it shows questionable judgment, but none of it warrants expulsion." Lucas sat still, waiting for the but. "We will not be pursuing disciplinary action," she continued. "In fact, we believe you've demonstrated remarkable courage under extraordinary pressure." Lucas exhaled slowly. It was over. Or so he thought. For a while, life settled. Jonas remained in custody as the legal proceedings unfolded. Lucas returned to his routines: school, family dinners, late-night homework. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something still followed him, unseen but ever-present. One night, while scrolling through his school email, he found a message from an anonymous sender. "Thought it was over, didn't you?" No attachments. No signature. Just a single sentence. His heart pounded. The address had been routed through a proxy. He forwarded it to the police immediately, but they couldn't trace it. The next day, Lucas noticed a figure outside his house. A man in a gray hoodie, standing across the street, staring for too long. When Lucas stepped outside, the man turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. He told his parents. They added new locks to the doors, installed security cameras. But the damage had already taken root. He started waking up at night, convinced someone was watching him through the window. His mother tried to comfort him. His father tried to act strong. But everyone in the house walked a little more quietly, like the walls were listening. And then came the package, delivered without a return address. Inside was a single USB drive. Lucas didn't touch it. He gave it straight to the police. The contents were chilling. Recordings, audio and video, from inside the school. Not just Lucas. Dozens of students. Conversations in hallways, classrooms, even bathrooms. Violations of privacy, on a scale no one had imagined. The authorities moved quickly, linking the footage back to a network of hidden devices. Jonas hadn't acted alone. A small group, students, possibly even one teacher, had helped set up the system. It had never been about Lucas alone. He had just been the easiest to control. The investigation expanded. More arrests followed. The school board launched an internal review, suspending staff and overhauling data protocols. Parents rallied. Lawyers got involved. Through it all, Lucas tried to hold himself together. But inside, a storm was raging. He had thought exposing Jonas would end the nightmare. Instead, it had only pulled back the curtain. The rot went deeper. The winter in Dortmund had arrived early, frosting the windows and silencing the streets with heavy snow. It was the kind of cold that pressed into your bones, lingering long after you stepped indoors. Lucas sat in his room, staring at the blank document on his laptop screen. The cursor blinked, waiting. There were so many things he could write, about fear, betrayal, justice, but the words refused to come. Until a knock sounded at the door. It was Sophie. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in a wool coat, her cheeks red from the wind. "I need to show you something," she said. They walked together to the community center, where a group of students had gathered. Not just from their school, but from across Dortmund. Some were victims. Others had been silent witnesses. All of them had come together with one purpose: to speak out. A local journalist had heard about the scandal. She wanted to document the student stories, not just Lucas's, but all of them. The ones who had been filmed. The ones who had been bullied into silence. The ones who had looked away and now wanted to make amends. Lucas hesitated. He didn't want to be the face of the story. But maybe he could be the voice. He sat down before the camera, lights glaring, the microphone humming. And he spoke. About the message he once received that changed everything. About the cost of chasing approval and how deep it had dragged him. About the courage it took to stop running. More students followed. Sophie. A boy from the year above. A girl who admitted she had helped Jonas once and regretted it every day since. The documentary aired 2 weeks later. It didn't go viral. It didn't shatter the internet. But it reached the people it needed to. In quiet living rooms, parents sat with their children and talked about privacy and pressure and fear. Schools across North Rhine-Westphalia updated their policies. Teachers were trained. Support groups were formed. And for the first time in a long time, Lucas felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was rebuilding.
Piece by piece.